Hey there, everyone. Thanks, and welcome back to Northlight Photographic Workshops. And this is a continuation of my studio visit series, and I've taken the opportunity here at Photostock to interview our very special guest, Mr. Jerry Spagnoli here. And he's been kind enough to come from New York and hang out with us and do a presentation and to also do a slight interview with me. So anyway, welcome, Jerry. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. Yeah, well, it's been really great to have you, and I'm hoping that you're liking Northern Michigan.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, you having a good time?
Yeah. I've never been up this part of the country. It's really nice to see.
Yeah, well, it was funny that you left New York and you didn't bring a coat.
Well, because it was 94 degrees.
I'm not making fun of you. I'm just saying that people don't understand that we're kind of on different type of climate up here. It's really nice. Yeah. We've been watching the rest of the world swelter, and it's just kind of, maybe we shouldn't tell people that it's
it's cool,
because we're not sweltering, but anyway. So, but we do have some good rain going on this weekend, which is a little bit of a problem for the event, but it's okay. So anyway, thanks a lot for coming. And as I said before, I picked you up at the airport yesterday, and we talked, and I should have had the cameras running then because I don't even know where I'm going to go with this interview, but it's just a nice thing to do. I'd maybe reference some of your talk last night when we were talking about some of your technical things in the daguerreotype work, the blues and things that we were going on, and you didn't really touch on them last night. Maybe we can get to some of that stuff, but I don't know. I think I'd rather hear from you on kind of where you are right now with your work. What are you doing currently?
Well, I got two projects. I guess it's only two at the moment. One is the Cotypes out in the West.
Right.
And there's a reference to the work that was done by Green and Thénard in Egypt. Yeah. And so I've had this in the back of my mind for many years. And I finally got the technique necessary to be able to prepare Cotypes in New York City and take them out west.
Take them with you.
Shoot them as if they were film, and then bring them back to New York and process them and get good results. So that's really made it possible for me to work on this project, which is really about the 20th century and the change from the let's say the ideology of the 20th century and anticipating in the future.
And through the somewhat antiquarian processes.
I think all these various processes, they're convenient reference points to historical moments. So, like if I shoot something in a daguerreotype, it's not so much that I want to make a daguerreotype for some arbitrary reason. The fact that I'm using a daguerreotype is a pointer towards the idea of a historical document and how historical documents
how they work, and how they're perceived by people.
Exactly. Yeah. So the same way with the Cotype, like I say, the two most impressive Cotypists from the 19th century did work in Egypt, and the work is so persuasive formally. Then I thought, well, I needed to use that material to do this documentation out in the deserts of the United States,
right?
In order to help people to plug into the agenda of the project.
Of the project itself.
Yeah. So.
And technically, I mean, a lot of people that kind of follow are into the technical aspect of it. I mean, what it involved in preparing a Cotype like that to be able to take with you on the road into a place where the environment's going to be changing, and what kind of things are you up against?
Well, the traditional Cotype process was a wet process,
right?
Like Talbot's process.
Yeah.
And it appears that when the French kind of get interested in the Cotype in the 1850s, late 1840s, there was, I'm not an expert on the exact history, the parameters of the history, but there were legal disputes about them taking Talbot's process and claiming
proprietary on it, yes, so, because he, yeah.
So what they did was they altered it chemically, and they actually altered its parameters so that with Talbot's process you had to use it wet, whereas when the French were using it, they devised methods where it could be used dry. And so you could prepare the plate, so prepare the paper in advance. There was Legre's process, which would last for 2 or 3 days. And I used that in New York because it was convenient to my studio.
Right.
But then there's a pelligree process, which basically involves coating the finished calotype with a coating of dextrin and tannin, which are sugars that
yes.
seal the surface, and made it possible then to shoot. I'm doing a test now where it may be capable of going for 2 months or 3 months.
Really?
Yeah.
So you can
use it like film.
Right. You go
but it's used like film, but it's still a paper process, so that you have all of the artifacts of the paper substrate. And I think that's the key to the analogy to the material in the desert. You know, the desert is a kind of granular environment,
right?
And then so the material also enhances that granularity.
It does, and that's what I noticed in the images that you were showing last night. Is
exactly.
that it suits that environment quite well.
Exactly, and I always thought that. This is for years and years, and I finally managed to get it all together to now do this project.
Yeah.
I got a big grant, and that helps.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah,
So you were saying something about working on projects for some time, that you have several books that are ready to go, and it'll be 15 years before they're out.
It might be, yeah.
Now, you were mentioning that, and I don't even know, you can off the record in this part too, but I was interested in who your publisher was.
Steidl.
Yeah, I figured it was Steidl.
Yeah.
15 years, the way that you
who has that reputation?
Yeah, exactly. So, something has to be said about his not only the printing ability, but the ability to read the zeitgeist of what people are interested in at that time too. It seems to be so.
Well, also he's a perfectionist.
Yeah,
So it's always good to have somebody who's publishing your work that really cares about the quality of the books.
Yeah,
He's very attentive. It takes a long time to get the book to the point where it gets printed.
Yes.
But when you're actually dealing with the design of the book and the materials of the book, he's extremely interested in getting the highest quality and giving the artists the options to use the best
possible
materials
that are available,
and to make all decisions about the materials.
And, your books are beautiful. I mean, I'm very excited about the heirloom book.
That heirloom book there was by Bloomsbury.
Yeah.
So because that was kind of a side project that was done for Amy Goldman.
Yeah.
Who was the actual author of the book.
Right.
And she's done a series of beautiful color photograph books.
I'm very much looking forward, because I've seen some of those original plates before. I think in Ann Arbor and some other gallery someplace I've seen them, and they're just quite beautiful, little full plates.
Yeah.
So, but so you're thought of as a daguerreotypist and things, but that's what I thought was going to be really great about your presentation, is the fact that there was a you before that, and there is a you after that, but you are still working in the daguerreotypes, aren't you?
Oh yeah. I'm working now with large format. Well, I've been working with large format in the studio since probably 2016 or so.
Yeah.
And that was partly the problem was transporting the 16 by 20 camera and the plates and all that out in New York City, and also the issues of the kinds of lenses that are available for 16 by 20. You don't really have wide angle lenses in 1620, so it's very difficult to work on the street as I had been in the past with that format. So I had to come up with a rationale for a large format in the field. So for the past year, I've been working on improving my technique, and in order to have subject matter, because I don't like shooting test plates. Every time, because you put as much work into shooting a test plate
as you do into a
to
final
make an
plate.
image.
Right.
So I feel like if it's a successful image, you don't want a grayscale. You want to see an image.
Yeah.
So I would basically schlep the gear up to Central Park, and there's a particular spot where they have these beautiful trees, and I would use those trees as basically my tests. So I've been working with that, and I've got it to the point where my polish is where I need it to be to produce. Now what I want to do is shoot Manhattan. In particular, I want to shoot a triptych and possibly 5-plate of Manhattan Island from the elevated heights of Weehawken. So
you can get the whole thing.
There's a cliff up there, and so you can get this spectacular view of Manhattan. It's probably, if you wanted to take a view of Manhattan, that's the best place to see all of it. So you could do this sweeping panorama with 16 by 20 plates. So that's now, possible.
So you're going to be, that's something that you're working toward right now?
Well, it's going to be something I'm going to do as soon as, what I've got coming up now is this coming week I'm going back to New York, and I'm going to, again, make sure that I've got everything I need so it's together. But next Sunday is the Pride Parade in New York City.
So you're going to be shooting that as part of your.
I have an elevated viewpoint. Looks down Fifth Avenue, and it's a perfect.
Fantastic
place to shoot. So I'm going to shoot that. Hopefully that comes out.
Now, are you shooting that in 1620?
1620.
Wow.
So hopefully that works, and
wow.
So if that works, then.
And that'll just be a single shot. You're not trying to do any kind of.
I got 3 plates, but there's gonna be like I'll shoot 3 plates.
Yeah.
But it's all one thing.
Right. You're not doing any kind of.
No. Well, what's the point? It's all happening.
Yeah, it's all happening right there. Well, you could have the windows of the buildings on this side.
That's a waste. That's a waste of a plate. I can shoot empty windows anytime I want.
Now, speaking of that, I mean, I got another. You're talking. I'm coming up with other questions. A lot of the street images that you were showing last night are stunning. I mean, they're just incredibly spectacular. And
cool.
You're I'm not yet, but as a photographer who's worked on the street like that, it's difficult enough as it is, let alone setting up a tripod and dark slide. And do you work often when you're by yourself, or do you?
I'm always by myself.
You're always by yourself. So what kind of an experience do you end up having some of these times when you're doing this? Are people interested in you at all?
Sometimes.
Or do they just leave you alone?
Sometimes they're interested in it. I find that the interest level rises and lowers with the media reports on things that have to do with the daguerreotype or old-fashioned cameras,
right?
So like there was a period when I think it was like when a daguerreotype camera came up in Switzerland, maybe 8 years ago or so, and it went up to auction and it sold for $1 million, and that got everybody's attention. So it was funny because I'd be out there and I have an 8x10 view camera and I'm working, and occasionally someone would come up and say, "Are you making a daguerreotype?" And it's like I'd say to them, you have no idea how unlikely it would be that is true, but in fact
it is true.
I'm making a daguerreotype.
Yeah.
But the other times you get people that ask, "Oh, do you have that flash?" They want
the big.
So yes, people have that
flash.
interest. Sometimes they see you up there with an 8x10 view camera and they figure you must know what you're doing, so they hand you their iPhone.
Exactly.
And they say, "Can you take a picture of me and my husband?" And it's like, of course I do it.
Well, the other thing I've had happen too when I'm at places like that is I'll be, at the Grand Canyon and there's 80 feet that way and 80 feet that way that you could be photographing the exact same scene and it's not going to change. But because I'm sitting there with the dark slide, a busload of people will get off and they'll just sit there behind you waiting for you to move.
Oh, they figure he must know.
He must know what he's doing.
I've had that happen where people will actually step in front of the camera briefly, take a picture, and move on.
I've had that too.
Because they got no idea what to take a picture of themselves.
And they think that you're out there just having fun too. They don't. It's not like you're doing your job.
No, it's funny. It's funny. Yeah. Sometimes they'll ask you if you're watching TV because I'll stand there or I'm making a film. So I got this old wooden camera, 8x10 wooden camera. Well, what happens is when I do these things, I set the camera up and I wait. I have to wait till something occurs or the light is right. So I could be there for half an hour, an hour. Just waiting for the light to finally rake the building in a certain way. Yeah. And so people see you standing there for a long time with a camera on a tripod. They figure you're filming.
Because, that's right, because you've got to be doing something.
Yeah, if it's still images, go click and move.
Now, authority-wise, do you ever have anything with that?
No, sometimes have security from a building that, because they're concerned about, it's always like this. It's like you have a guy who works the street in front of a building,
right? And
then he has a
somebody
superior,
up above a spotter,
and the person calls him up and says, "We see this guy down there, find out what he's doing." So he's obliged to come over and harass me. And generally, they don't really want to bother you, So it's kind of you talk to them a little bit. And you tell them, look, I'll be gone in 15 minutes. Right. And it's like, okay, if you're gone in 15 minutes, it's no problem.
Yeah. I mean, I've been out with the wet plate trailer doing this, and police will come up and they'll ask you what you're doing, and you'll start. I tell them about the process, and you see their eyes glaze over, and pretty soon they just.
Yeah, no, that's true.
They're on their way. They're not. They know you're not a threat.
Actually, there's one place you can't photograph, or at least I couldn't photograph, and I wasn't really trying to photograph it because I didn't even know what it was. But down around Wall Street, there's this really prodigious big door in a formidable building, and I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. The light was nice, so I was setting up there, and a guy come over And across the street told me I can't photograph that building. It turns out that that's where they keep all the gold bullion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's like Fort Knox in Manhattan.
In Manhattan.
So but then I'm thinking, let's face it, if I'm going to like plan a robbery of gold bullion, I'm not going to be there with an 8x10 view camera. I mean, come on.
Well, people have to justify their position, their job.
Well, again, his superior told him that this is the
Somebody
rule.
said he's got to come down and do it.
So, I oblige because most of the time it isn't that important and it isn't worth the argument.
Right.
So I just let it go.
A lot of my time in Detroit was, I would photograph at night, and I swear I probably one time had a police officer come up on me. I got visited by stray dogs more than I got visited by that, but it changed after 9/11. All of a sudden everybody was, I couldn't go places that I was just completely free to go before, simply because they had somebody watching that, and they were much more aggressive in those days.
Yeah, I remember one time I was shooting after 9/11. I was shooting across the East River. There's a big tower in Queens, and at the time it was the only big tower, and I thought that's an interesting image.
Yeah.
So I went down there to East River and I set up my tripod, and I'm doing all the finagling, and a police boat actually came in off the road, and they come over, and it's like they're there, and it's like, what are you doing? Yeah. And I go, I'm photographing that building. Oh, you mean the bank building, whatever bank it was, and it's like, oh shit.
Now I know why they're here.
It's like there's some kind of infrastructure that I'm not supposed to be photographing.
Yeah.
But then they kind of like looked at me like I was just some weirdo when they left.
The most extreme situation I had was coming back from Vermont, getting the book done, and I was going through Niagara Falls, New York, and I decided at night it'd be really nice to photograph the falls. Yeah. So I was going several places photographing at night after they turned off the lights. It's really beautiful. And no sooner did I get set up than there were people on me, police on me, and they were holding me, and they wanted to know what I was doing. They held me. I could hear my name being read off radios and different. Not only that, but different agencies. And so they held me for about 45 minutes. And I brought out the proofs of the book on the hood, and I was showing them and stuff because they had nothing to do but wait. And then finally they just packed up and they let me go, and they kind of put word out. And for the rest of that night, anytime I saw a cop, they just kind of escorted me or watched over me or said, oh yeah, we heard about you, you're fine, you can go down there. And it took away all that. But it turned out the original photograph was right at the water intake for the New York, whatever it was. So. Yeah.
I remember one time I had a situation where it was something I wanted to shoot, a building I wanted to shoot, and the security guard came over, and I was within, I was off the curb, there was no reason I could have legally maintained my position, but I didn't get in his face about it. But so basically he come over while I'm making the exposure. This is about a 2-minute exposure. Yeah. So he comes over and he's like asking me what I'm doing, and I was kind of explaining it. And he said, well, you can't take any photographs here. I said, oh, that's okay. And I put the dark slide in. I flipped it over. I did that second exposure. I, opened the lens. And I'm still talking to him. I'm making the exposure.
Yeah, he doesn't know.
He has no idea what I'm up to.
Yeah, because you're not,
Yeah, so it's like, so I say, okay, that's cool. I'll be out of here in a minute, And so he thought he was doing his job. And
that's good. I mean, in New York City that you're able, because that was my first thought back to what I was asking, those beautiful street images in Wall Street and things with the light. Yeah. I mean, you obviously know your environment. That's one thing about being a landscape photographer is you just are vigilant. You get to know what happens each day, and then you know when to be where you are. You pick your light. Yeah. It's spectacular use of that. I mean, unbelievable. And the fact that you live in New York City, I lived there for a little while, and it's not easy. I mean, nothing's easy. I mean, you're not got a car that you open up the trunk and you get in, or any of that.
Well, that's the thing too. I mean, I've had people kind of confused, I think, by why I wouldn't just go out every day and shoot a daguerreotype, and it's like you have no idea how rare it is that there's something that's worthwhile,
worth that,
and then the light is right and everything is right. It's like to find anything over the course of a year, it's like it's not like you just go out and take a snapshot.
No,
and it's not like you shoot something without thought, So so it's a very elaborate process to find the image and then to rationalize, how you're going to use the image, why it's worthwhile.
Why it's worthwhile to shoot, and what is behind your shooting it.
And even in a place like New York, there's not a lot of options like that.
No, it's not. And me as somebody who always felt I needed to go someplace else to make art, it was hard to drop into another city and just start making things. You had to get to know. You had to go back. I've been going to Iceland for 20 years now, and I still am not done because you just constantly learning that environment and the times and places, and places change, and But in New York, it's just not easy. So that's what I was really struck by. A lot of those gorgeous images was the fact that you had to make them, and the idea of it, like you say too, that I find, why aren't you out there every day? Well, it's just the physicality of it now, and not even at this age, but even at a younger age, it's difficult to put all that stuff together, carry the cases.
That's not even the issue. Really.
Well, that's good. So that's why you're.
I mean, I take my 16 by 20. So I've got a 16 by 20 on a hand truck with like 2 plates,
Yeah.
2 16 by 20
Right.
plate holders, the lens and all that on a hand truck. And it's like I was taking a cab for a while, you know, but that's like $50. you
Yeah.
know? So every
Yeah.
time, and I was getting failures, you know, so it was like $50 down the
For a
drain.
fail, yeah.
So I thought, well, this is, I can't do that. So, you know, I was taking it on the subway.
So you're taking the train.
Actually, when I was doing the Cotype, you know, I would. There was one shot that I wanted to get of Lower Manhattan, which
Yeah.
I showed last night, and so I would take a 2024 camera with 2 2024 holders and
Yeah.
a lens, and then I'd have to walk up to 34th Street because they had an elevator because there's just no other. They had an elevator down to the subway. I had to take a subway over to Times Square, and in Times Square, then I'd have to get into an elevator to go to another platform. Then I'd have to take that down to the World Trade Center, the station. Then I'd have to get onto the PATH train and take the
Yeah,
PATH
the
train
PATH
over to New
over to
Jersey.
Jersey.
And then I have to like schlep the gear onto a
Oh
pier.
my God, I'm getting tired just listening.
Exactly,
To
and then you get back to the studio, you process it. It's like fucked.
this. Oh God, I know.
And meanwhile, I prepared the plate. I prepared the sheet of paper earlier in the morning. So
Yeah.
like this is all done in one day. So I'm preparing the paper and then waiting for it
Yeah.
to dry, and then so you do the same thing the next day. And the
So these
next
are
day.
calotypes. That
The
you're doing,
calotypes
yeah.
that I'm talking about. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So yeah, no, but that's all. I mean, that's what I do. That's
Yeah,
my job.
I know, and I do the same thing. But here I'm listening to your side of it, and I know all the things that I go through to do things, and
Exactly.
it can be exhausting. But you know, that's the beauty of it, is that we're driven by this passion that doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Well, your
you
job
want-
is to make that image.
Yeah, yeah,
that's-
and it's good, and that's what I like that you speak in that way, because too many times, I mean, I don't know about you, but there's a lot of people in my life that just don't really know what I do. You know what I mean? And therefore they think it's more, you know, you're just kind of having fun, and it is fun, but it is a job, and I love that about you, is that you talk about this being your job, and you know, it's
Well, you have to be tolerant of the idea that, you know, people are going to think you're a weirdo.
yeah. Well, I'm kind of over that by now.
Exactly,
you know? Yeah.
exactly. You get over that, you know, and you know what I think, as it over the years, I've developed momentum in my own mind for the project, because it's a lifelong project.
Right.
So it's like, you know, you start out, you're always carrying the 35 millimeter, you know, and then you're shooting, and then you're putting together an idea of what it is you're doing. And then you sustain that despite changing media and changing subject matter, but you sustain the intentionality of the project.
The whole project.
And so that, you know, at a certain point, you know, that is what you're supposed to be doing. That's your job. It's like if you're chief executive for IBM or whatever,
Right.
you know, it's like
I
that's
understand.
your job. you
I
know?
understand.
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
I'm with you on that. It's just that it's good to hear you talk about that, because I don't hear a lot of people speak in those terms.
Yeah, well, people aren't crazy enough
Yeah,
to.
to be doing this. I know there was somebody asking the question last night about monetizing this. And
Oh, yeah, that was like...
your face was funny. It's like, monetize, really? No.
Can you do
I'd
that?
like to find some way to monetize it. But yeah, I know. We'll all go through that. But I mean, that's what it keeps us going. I don't know what it is about it in me that makes me wake up every day and want to go out, you know, to the other building and start making prints again. You know,
Exactly.
I mean, there's nothing else that I've ever had in my life that I've wanted to do that, I suppose, other than breathe, and you know,
Yeah.
and that's part of it. I mean, it becomes to us, I suppose it's just one of the integral parts of life.
Well, I mean, the whole point of, let's say, I think one that you look at like psychological studies and stuff, and the the key to having a happy life is to have a purposeful life.
Exactly.
You know, and so however contrived the purpose might be, you know, it is fundamental to your psychological well-being to feel that you're engaged in something that's purposeful.
Yes.
And so it's a privilege too, because a lot of people can never find that purpose. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I understand that too.
it's a gift to have.
You know, there's a
purpose.
lot of people that I know that just, you know, and you see it in people and you see the creativity in people, but there's that other part of it that needs to be there that just
Yeah.
isn't, unfortunately. And
Yeah,
you know,
well, for whatever reason, you know,
right.
and they've got another purpose, a
Yeah,
different purpose.
that's a different purpose,
Yeah,
right?
so, and they have to find that.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, and you know, before we go here, that's kind of the last thing that I would touch on is your purpose. And when you were talking about your work, it was interesting to hear you describe yourself as more of a documentarian than anything else. And you know, considering the process that you're using, but I really love the way that you know, and it's not a case of just you know, I should say rationalization or anything like that to give yourself purpose. I mean, you have an actual, your whole reference to history. And that's how people see history, and the fact that you're using these old processes to do that is really, really super effective, I think. You know.
Well, this too, and it's like I am alert to the possibilities of rationalizing what I do,
Right.
And just being something that's you know, narcissistic or whatever,
Right.
you know. But in my experience, I constantly find validation in the success of the images that I come up with, and the most essential components of these successful images has very little to do with me, and it just happens because, you know, the entire circumstances around the photograph conform to making this photograph, and so that, you know, I'm constantly reassured about this sense of purpose, and constantly reassured about the fact that it's not just being generated by ego.
Yeah,
That, you know, it's coming from some necessity, some inner necessity of the medium. Let's call it.
I mean, it's valid and it has validity, and and I really appreciate you for being you, because there's a lot of times in doing the things that we've done, I think that we get looked at as process fetishists or things like that. You know, I mean, I've been termed that before by people in contemporary photographers, and they just kind of think we're wasting our time playing with processes and things. But you know, to hear you, the direction that you're coming from, it's like I say, it's very successful, and it's so much better than anything done in any other way, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. And I think too that, you know, my actual kind of practical intention, aside from the work itself and, you know, the project itself that I'm engaged with, is that, you know, other photographers can see what I'm doing or will see what I've done in the future, and I'll provide this kind of model for them then to engage photography in that particular way. And I think that there is something fundamental about the way I've engaged photography. Like I say, by conforming to some notion of documentary, and I think that is a fundamental aspect of photography that in some ways is overlooked. I think that a lot of people, you know, if they are documentary photographers, they feel that the subject matter is entirely what it's about, and that the medium that they choose to use should just be up to date and should be contemporary.
It should be contemporary, yes,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm. That's what
whereas
I'm
I feed into the idea of a documentary principle, but then I utilize the materials in ways to illuminate the let's say the idiosyncratic aspects of documentary.
Right.
That it's not a simple depiction of the subject, which doesn't inform the subject through the medium of photography. That it's sort of like you're using photography to achieve other ends. Is what I'm trying to do is use photography to inform the notion of the document and the world itself. Yeah, so
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I love it. I mean, it's fantastic to have this. You know, in hearing this, I think that there's a lot of us other photographers out here and artists that'll hear this and think, you know, because it is one of those things where, I don't know, you know, I don't really worry too much about what other people say, but it's difficult at times to be marginalized into a certain area simply because of the process that you use or something like that. And,
I think it's just not, you know, and you arrive at these ideas through circuitous routes, and most people don't do that, don't get there, and so they have to, in some ways, you know, they have to be informed by the actual work.
Right.
You know, that the work is the proof of the project.
And then nothing was more proof than when I saw your images of the World Trade Center coming down. I mean, there was this incredibly topical, probably one of the more important things that's happened in the last, you know, half century at least, and there it was in that process, and something about that process also made it seem so much more historic, if you say. And then also with the your inauguration shot with Obama, same thing, same kind of thing. It was really great to see some topical subject done in that way. So anyway, I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Oh, pleasure, and I'm
really
so
appreciate
happy
it.
that you invited me out here to do this.
Oh, that's great. Wish you could stick around all week. It gets to be a long week after a while, as you can see. Photostock has become one of those things to me that I just can't stop doing. But when it happens, it's, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm gonna live through
Yeah, no,
this.
it's a great thing.
Yeah, I have a good time. Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. And everybody that's watching right now, thanks for continuing to watch. I really hope you like this, and keep looking for more. I'll keep doing this as long as I can. So thanks a lot, Jerry.
Oh, my pleasure.
Really appreciate it. Thanks.